We've seen a lot of fighting recently between schools and parents, but a new bill is working to change that and have them actually talk to each other to try to set their kids up for success. If the pandemic taught us anything, it's that we need our medical professionals, especially our nurses, but it's been hard to keep them, especially in rural places. Another new bill might change that. What goes up must come down, and nowhere is that being felt more than at the Caldwell Airport, where pilots said goodbye to an iconic cafe. The coronavirus pandemic really altered our world in a lot of obvious ways for a lot of obvious reasons. It showed us what we can do without, and focused our attention on some things like never before, like toward education. The changes in academics for students through COVID saw parents, students, administrators, and teachers launch into, you could call them major discussions on what goes on inside a classroom. It's a touchstone for many. Transparency and communication between schools and families, those are crucial to success. And it's the spirit of that idea that prompted Idaho's top education leader to draft legislation called the Parental Bill of Rights. Superintendent Debbie Critchfield sat down to discuss this bill with Joe Paris.
When education's been in the news lately, it seems to be a theme of controversy. But to help address some of those concerns, Idaho's new superintendent of public instruction, Debbie Critchfield, she's sending a strong message on the relationship between schools and families with this new legislation.
I want to take the politics out of being a parent. And that's what we've heard from parents around the state. They want to be a part of the process. Schools want to partner with parents. And if we can remove any of the barriers or just kind of that stigma of parents versus schools or teachers, the better off we are.
House Bill 163, referred to as a Parental Bill of Rights, aims to encourage transparent communication between parents and schools about what's going on during a school day.
We spend a lot of time communicating with parents, districts, and teachers do, hey, sign this permission slip. We want to take your first grader to the pumpkin patch. Or parent-teacher conferences are coming up, or even some fun things that say, don't forget to tell your kids it's Crazy Sock Friday, or whatever it is. Let's not leave that outside of just that. And we want to include other very important, sensitive topics. That if there is a survey, a non-academic survey, let the parents know. Make the survey available and allow parents the opportunity to decide whether or not their child participates. What it doesn't do is limit local decision making. So a local board can still decide to do the things that they want to do, whether it's a survey or having outside industries or entities come to support school services. Let parents know.
The bill touches on things like communicating with parents if a student is showing signs of being troubled, or letting families know about the health services and the options they have at a school. Or even if a school resource officer has to question a student on something, parents will be notified. The key here, according to stakeholders, let parents know what's happening in schools so they can be in the loop.
Parents are the primary and main factor in the success of their child. And I think about it as kind of a stool with three legs. You have the parent who's the expert on their child, and you have the teacher who's the expert about education. And then when you add a child who's then responsible for their own learning, that's a perfect recipe for academic and emotional success. And when you've cut off one of those places, or if the parent feels like they're outside of that system or limited or shut down, then that's imbalanced. And really we want to restore that balance again. And I think taking the tension out of it, we're talking about parents and we're talking about students, and it's become so politicized that I'm hoping that we can really right-size this and restore that.
Critchfield says the concept for this Parental Bill of Rights is rooted in her campaign for the superintendent office. She heard a lot from Idahoans on the campaign trail about communication with schools, so she came up with a list of 10 things that she believes parents are entitled to.
And I would share that at different events, and I was so surprised but also encouraged as parents would come up and say, you know, thank you. I didn't know that I could go and sit down and have a conversation with my teacher and say, I have concerns about, you know, this of what was said, or my child brought home something that I don't think was appropriate, and a bunch of other things, especially consent. I think that that's a big topic. I'm not a fan of implied consent. Me not telling you no does not mean I told you yes as a parent. And how do we open up these lines of communications, and how do we talk about this with our parents is really the theme in this legislation.
Critchfield says she knows schools across Idaho do a great job with communication. This, however, just puts a baseline of expectations in Idaho code.
We want to ensure that there's some uniformity. We've got most of our school districts do a fantastic job, if not everyone trying to do a fantastic job in communicating what's happening in the school. But for districts maybe who are unsure about how to go about this, this provides that level of confidence that regardless of where you are in Idaho, here is a bare minimum expectation as a parent.
So, Brian, the bill passed unanimously out of the House Education Committee earlier today, so it now heads to the full House of Representatives. And to be very clear here, this Parental Bill of Rights, which we'll link at ktvb.com with this article later, it doesn't tell school districts to go do X, Y, and Z. And Critchfield says, to be clear, she's very big on local control and local decision-making in terms of education. Really what this does is it sets a baseline of understanding between Idaho parents and Idaho schools saying, you need to talk, you need to communicate. I think there's a lot of things, for example, that we've talked about on this show over the last few years where if someone would have made some phone call or someone would have reached out, it might not have escalated to a community-wide crisis.
Well, see, that's surprising me. Maybe I'm spoiled with teachers my kids have had over the years, but to hear her say that she had parents come up and say, I didn't know I can go talk to my teacher?
Yeah.
That's shocking to me because it is. It's just an email, a phone call, knock on the door at the end of the school day. It seems like it should be that simple.
Communication is the #1 tool to success in every single job field, so there you go.
All right. Thanks, Joe. It's probably the biggest decision being made by Idaho lawmakers in recent memory. The Education Savings Account bill will impact a lot of people, and it will cost the state, well, actually you, the taxpayer, a lot of money. How much exactly? That is very much debatable. And we'll get to that in just a moment. But this whole ESA bill has a lot of people scratching their heads across the state, in the State House, and in our very own newsroom. Who's going to pay for what? Who's already paying for what? Who will get money? Who will lose money? And who will spend the most money? So we thought we could try and simplify it as much as we can so even a fifth grader could understand. According to Senate Bill 1038, the Education Savings Account bill, the state of Idaho pays, on average, $7,437.50 per public school student. That money goes to the student's school district. As it stands now, the state pays nothing for private or homeschool students. However, if a private or homeschool student signs up for the ESA program, they now become part of the state's ledger at an equal value of $7,437.50. 80% of which, or $5,950, would be put into a savings account to be used to pay for their private or homeschool education. Money they weren't getting before. And their local school district would get the remaining 20%, or $1,487.50. Money they weren't getting before either. So while that school district will now get a bump of nearly $1,500, the state of Idaho will be on the hook for another $7,400 it wasn't paying before. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And the school, there's another layer to this, because should that public school student, that was just talking about private and homeschool students who sign up for it, but if a public school student decides they're going to sign up for this ESA program and go to private school, or do homeschool for that matter, they're still going to cost the state $7,400, or more than $7,400, but they're going to leave the district with $5,950 less than they had before. Those are the numbers we know about, but there are other numbers out there, much bigger numbers that have a lot of people pointing fingers and questioning some equations. This week, the Idaho Center for Fiscal Policy released their take on the Education Savings Account bill. We talked about it yesterday. They're an independent, nonprofit, nonpartisan organization whose mission is to provide accurate financial analysis to inform public decisions. Yesterday, we learned they believe the program is going to balloon beyond its first-year costs, from $45 million to more than $360 million. And they're basing this on on 75% of private school students enrolling, 95% of homeschool students enrolling, and 12% of public school students enrolling, for a total of more than 60,000 students in the ESA program by year 2 and beyond. Well, a group that has a problem with those numbers, that may say they're a little bit inflated, maybe not accurate, is one we've also spoken with before. The Mountain States Policy Center says they aren't sure where the Fiscal Policy Center got its numbers, but they are sure they're a bit off. Overestimated, they say, and they're not going to happen.
Well, I mean, no one can predict the future, obviously, so I can't say with certainty that they're not going to happen. But what I can tell you, Brian, is that they haven't happened in other states, and that when you look at some of the data that's in this report, a 75 to 95% participation rate among private school and homeschoolers We have not seen that play out in any other state. This group is estimating 60,000 students would take advantage of the program in Idaho. Not even 60,000 have taken advantage of the program in Arizona, and Arizona is a state that's much larger than Idaho. So it's difficult to understand where they get some of these numbers from. If the numbers turn out to be correct, that would make Idaho's program the most successful and a history-breaking program. I think the number that we should be looking at, probably the closest, is the private school and the homeschooling numbers. And again, the 95% data point is what stuck out to me in terms of the homeschoolers. I quite frankly have not talked to very many homeschoolers who are all that excited about this, and I just cannot see a scenario play out where 95% of homeschoolers sign up.
But that's only because they're worried about government programs, oversight, and accountability. But this bill has not any of that.
Well, I would disagree that it doesn't have any of it. I think it does have some. To us, the greatest accountability is put with that of the parents.
Chris also points to the audit portion of the bill as at least some sort of oversight on how that money is spent. It just has to be spent on a student's education, tools for education, or even extracurricular activities, even transportation. You can pay for it with this money. What is being taught or who is teaching it? Well, there's no oversight in that. It's worth mentioning Chris is correct in saying Arizona doesn't even have 60,000 students signed up for their ESA program. But it's also worth pointing out this is also the first year it became universal in Arizona, just like Idaho's would be. There's no denying this program is going to cost the state money. Even the Mountain States Policy Center admits that. More money than what the state usually spends on education. For the mere fact, with homeschool and private school students signing up, the state will now have to pay more for them. But to what extent? Chris believes it will be a lot more than $45 million, just a lot less than $360 million. We have certain expectations for certain kinds of businesses. Healthcare, of course, makes that list. You need care. We expect that care is going to be given. In fact, it's supposed to happen. But someone needs to be there to do that, employed by the hospital or the clinic to do that job. Numbers from the Idaho Nursing Workforce Center shows our nurses are getting older, and more than 1/4 of them plan to retire within the next decade. Couple that with the ongoing struggle to get nurses working in remote parts of the state, it's become a big problem. A problem one Idaho lawmaker aims to fix with incentives. Here's Andrew Bartline.
It's been a problem for some time now.
It's no secret. I think everybody's aware that we have a nursing shortage.
Representative Dory Healy knows firsthand because she is a nurse.
I thought now was the time to go ahead and step up and be the voice for nursing and healthcare throughout Idaho.
She's focused specifically on healthcare in rural Idaho.
They are just not getting the nurses. They historically pay a little less, and that's why people are coming to urban areas to work. So we had to come up with an incentive program to help them want to work out there.
The incentive is outlined in House Bill 84. The bill aims to establish a rural nursing loan repayment program. 50 nurses the first year could receive $5,000 each for their student loans. 25 nurses in year 2 could receive $10,000 each, and another 25 in year 3 for another $10,000 each.
We certainly support this effort.
Misty Robertson operates the St. Luke's Fruitland Medical Center. She says this bill provides solutions to their exact needs.
It can be difficult to recruit nurses into rural areas just because when they're in school, it may be a little bit more difficult to have clinical experiences. There are less services in those areas.
I don't think it's going to necessarily solve the problem, but I think it's going to really help.
A 2022 Idaho Nursing Workforce Center report shows the average Idaho nurse is getting older. 37% are at least 55 years old, and more than 1 in 4 plan to retire within a decade.
We've been struggling with a nursing shortage prior to COVID, but certainly the pandemic has aggravated that shortage. And it can be more difficult in a rural area to have adequate nursing. We need to support those areas.
The crux behind this program is to incentivize them to go out and help our most needed populations. And
because if we don't,
I worry about our future.
Representative Healy says it's just a matter of time.
I don't know that people understand that if we have one critical access hospital have to shut down or one skilled nursing facility, it will impact somebody's family. That's one heart attack that goes 30 more minutes without that access, or that's one elderly person that doesn't get the care they need, or they have to drive 3 hours to go visit them. And I don't think they understand that until it happens to them.
House Bill 84 is currently in the House. We expected to hear it on the floor today. However, that bill has been held. Speaker Moyle said on the floor that bill will be held until Monday. And Brian, that bill is in its third reading. So we expect on Monday that will be the time where we hear the full debate on it and potentially a vote.
It's kind of interesting because we're hearing that they want to create these incentives for healthcare workers to stay here in the state of Idaho, work here in the state of Idaho. But at the same time, there's also bills working their way through the House right now that are causing some healthcare workers, doctors, to say they want to get out of here because of some of these bills that are moving through the legislature.
And I'm not sure if those are exactly connected, but that was part of what was in that report too, to where they said people are coming to school in Idaho to be nurses, but then there's a decent percentage of them that are then leaving and choosing to work elsewhere after they get their education here. Well, they would like to keep them here after they get their education here. And they said that the nursing schools are full, so when they get taught here, they want them to stay here.
Well, that's good because we do need them. All right, thank you very much, Andrew. of flying can be an adventure, whether it's commercial, a puddle jumper, or even in the Air Force. What goes up, though, must come down, and that's true for the Caldwell Airport Cafe. They're closing their doors for good after generations of being in business and being owned by the same family. Photojournalist John Mark shows us.
You can stop and get fuel and you can get something to eat.
You come in, you know the people that are here. It's kind of like the old Cheers thing. Like Norm, it's like, hey, Harold, hey, Lynn.
Been in the family for a long time.
My grandma owned it and she was the cook. My mom and my aunt, they were the waitresses. And then like me and my sister, we were just little kids and we'd come in and do dishes, you know, and think we were probably helping, but we were more than likely in the way.
I remember coming here when she was, you know, just out of diapers pretty much. and waiting tables even then. And
Cream, yeah, of course. Thank you, guys.
And then I took over 10 years ago.
It's more like family.
The photo up there on the wall is, my grandma wasn't even fond of flying, but one of our pilots convinced her to go flying. And then he turned the airplane upside down and yeah, that's her exact words. Don't you dare do that again. This is just our memory wall, you know, they can come in and pull their picture down and they can pass it around the table and share their stories.
And then that builds on another story that somebody thinks of, and, you know, before you know it, lunch can be an hour and a half and you're like, ooh, better get back to work.
It's emotional for the veterans. You don't realize how much an aircraft can mean to somebody that has been in World War II, you know, it's absolutely emotional.
Yeah, and I think that's what keeps a lot of us pilots alive, is sharing those stories.
I'm sure we'll see you around.
I feel like by closing this and doing what they want to do, I feel like a lot of people aren't going to be exposed to aviation like they used to be.
We're gonna miss you guys for sure.
In the last few days, I've watched a lot of people cry, and you know, that tells me what this place means to them.
I met some of my best friends here on the airport in this, and that's what I was thinking of earlier today when I got emotional.
Step back there and give her a hug. I know she's trying to stay out of the light because she cries.
I've truly been blessed with the amount of people that have come out here for all these years. The entire circumference of my heart, I absolutely love you guys.
There's still an opportunity for pilots and anyone else to reunite with the Airport Cafe staff. Say goodbye if you'd like. You can find them at the Veterans Christmas Eve dinner at the Caldwell Veterans Memorial Hall. Becky said she is looking forward to seeing some of her old friends there, too. All right, lots of questions and comments today about the ESA bill. It's working its way through the Idaho State House. Still on the Senate side, still waiting for a hearing there. But this one comes from Larry. Why isn't the money being talked about for ESA being used for teachers' wages? Well, Larry, that's an entirely separate fund. This is an extra fund, $45 million for that first year. This is not tied to the general fund or the usual general fund school budget that we usually see. So less than 95% of homeschoolers will sign up for free money due to their anti-government principles. Pretty sure even Idahoans aren't that gung-ho, says Sam in Boise, especially when there's no oversight on this specifically in the bill. In these calculations about school funding, with or without the school voucher system, if 60,000 students or whatever, if they enroll, is there any consideration that this will require fewer teachers and hopefully fewer administrators? That should have some impact on the state's education budget. Sure, Bob, or it should. But that's the thing, there's no definitive answer to that. We don't know until we find out after that first year, so there's no way to predict how that's going to go. And by some predictions, it's really going to jump up in that second and third year. Idaho's never funded our public schools adequately, and that's true. There's still a lawsuit from 2005 that says that, working its way through. Now they want to fund it even less by giving precious public school money to individuals to educate themselves. The ones getting schooled will be us, the taxpayers, says Chris in Haley. How refreshing, a Republican legislator wanting to solve a real problem, nursing shortage. Why can't more of them look at real problems and not contrived ones, says David in Boise County. Idaho now has a reputation for criminalizing and denigrating professions like doctors, librarians, teachers. Why would nurses want to come here? They might be the next target. We'll see you tomorrow.